So the first topic I'm going to talk about today is degree and leading coefficient of a univariate polynomial. Just to clarify a couple of things here, if you remember from previous chapters, coefficient is defined as the number in front of a variable. So -12, -15, -2, those are all coefficients. Univariate just means one variable. So the problems that we're going to do in this topic are all just going to have one variable. We're going to get to some in the next day or two that have two variables. So that will be a multivariate polynomial. So what we're looking at here, if you take a look at this polynomial that we're given, it says what are the degree and leading coefficient of the polynomial. So what I want you to think about is degree is basically going to be defined as your highest exponent. Okay, so your degree is going to be whatever your highest exponent is. So in this particular problem, if you look at all of our terms, the highest exponent that I have is 3. So for this one, for this particular example, my degree would be 3. The second part of this is leading coefficient. Now that sometimes gets confusing for people because they think that the leading coefficient is automatically going to be whichever coefficient is the highest number. So if you look at your coefficients here, you've got -12, -15, -2, and 10. 10 is the highest number out of those four, but it's not going to be the leading coefficient. I want to explain to you why. There's a form that we use for these polynomials. It's called standard form. And standard form basically means putting all the exponents in order from highest to lowest. Okay, so if you take a look at our four terms here, we have exponents on all of them. And to put it in standard form, you're going to take your highest exponent first, which in this case would be the 3. So your first term would be -15v to the third. Your second term would be -12v squared. Your third term would be -2v. And your last term would be your constant, which is just 10. Technically, the v here has a 1 on it. So you see here that I have these in order. This one doesn't even have a variable. So technically this is v to the 0 power, but we're not going to even throw that in there. But if you see here, the exponents are all put in order from highest to lowest. When you do that, this is actually very easy because right here is your what we call lead term or your leading term. And this is going to tell you both the degree and the lead coefficient. So you see your highest exponent shows up here. So your degree is that 3. And the other thing that shows up here is your lead coefficient, because whatever that number is going to be your lead coefficient. Now we're going to get into some stuff at the very end of the year where the lead coefficient is going to tell us a little bit about our polynomial. For right now, we're just getting in the habit of finding that and practicing for some stuff later on. And that's all you got to do for this type of problem. So we're going to take a look at a couple more here. Now you don't have to necessarily write it in standard form, but if I was going to do that, this one would be u to the 8th, because 8 is my highest exponent. Next would be 12u squared, because that's the next highest. This technically has a 1 there, so this would be 2u. And the last term would be -15. One thing that a lot of people get caught up on is not remembering negatives. So if you notice here, this 12u squared, it wasn't just 12u squared, it was this negative that was attached to it here as well. So you got to be careful with that. That's a mistake that I see made pretty often. Now looking at what my degree is here, degree, remember, is your highest exponent. So your degree of this one is going to be 8. And the last part, the lead coefficient, is going to be whatever number is in front of this first term. Now, a lot of people would say that u to the 8th is the lead coefficient. I get where you're getting that from, but keep in mind here that there is a number in front of that term, and that number that is in front of that is 1. So the lead coefficient for this polynomial is 1. The last example for this topic that I'm going to give you here is this problem here. Sometimes you have it written in almost standard form, but you'll notice here that the first term that we have is the first term when I rewrite it. So sometimes you may get lucky and be able to just use whatever term shows up first. Other times, like in our previous examples, you have to rewrite them in order for you to be able to figure out what the first term is. So taking a look at this last one here, our degree of this polynomial is going to be the first exponent here, which in this case is 9. And the lead coefficient for us here is going to be this number that's attached to it, -10. 8 is the biggest number here. Out of all these all these coefficients, 8 is the biggest one. So I got -10, -20, -5. 8's the only one that's positive, so it's the biggest one. But it's not the lead coefficient because the lead coefficient is always just whatever is attached to that first term. We saw that in this problem. It was a 1, even though 2 was bigger than that. And in the first problem, we had 10 was our biggest coefficient, but -15 was the leading one because it was a part of that first term.